I'm Julie. Most people call me Jules. I'm going to be reading you a short story, and it's also a true story. So, I had a ghost in my apartment in Toronto. Or, well, I think I did. At least for a little while. He was a polite ghost, though, so he went away when I asked him to. Very respectful of my boundaries, that one. A gentleman. I don't remember how long I lived there before it started, but every once in a while I would just get this overwhelming feeling of somebody watching me. It happened most often when I was standing at the bathroom mirror, doing my hair or putting on makeup. It felt like the person was at the far end of the hall, between the front door and the kitchen. I sometimes felt it when I was in the kitchen too, but as someone who famously hates cooking, it's not like I was in there often. I never felt it anywhere else though, which meant that I never sensed it in my bedroom, thankfully, or when the bathroom door was closed. As I said, very respectful, very gentlemanly. Some mornings I'd wake up to find my kitchen cupboards or drawers wide open. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe I just left them open, and I get that. But I cannot stand having cupboards left open. Once when my friend Paul was making me dinner, I followed him around his kitchen, closing drawers and doors behind him. I see the people who know Paul laughing, picturing that. Something about having them left open just makes me anxious, like clutter or seeing something fragile too close to the edge of a table. So it seemed unlikely that I was doing it myself, even if it was in my sleep. Of course, my cat seemed to sense something too. They always do, don't they? Cats love a good horror trope. He never seemed bothered by it though. He never hissed or growled at it, just watched it intently. I wasn't really bothered by it either, other than its tendency to mess around in my kitchen. I didn't feel scared or threatened or even creeped out, really. After a while, it was just like having a silent roommate who was a little bit annoying sometimes, as all roommates are. Unfortunately, he never paid rent. Perk of the afterlife, I guess. I've been living in the city for a couple years when something bad happened. This story isn't about that, though, so suffice it to say, it sucked and I had a really hard time coping afterwards. I was constantly on edge, just a frayed nerve in a tweed dress and a matching cardigan. Don't judge me, it was the early 2010s. One evening I felt someone watching me while I got ready to go out. Even though I'd never felt threatened by that before, suddenly the thought that there could be someone else there, I just couldn't handle it. So I turned toward the hallway and screamed, "I have enough to deal with right now. Get out of here, leave me alone." And you know what? He did. I lived in that apartment for another 6 years, and not once did I sense anyone or anything else in there with me. Well, aside from the odd bug, it was Toronto after all. And the kitchen cupboards and drawers never left open again. Over the next decade, I barely thought about my Toronto ghost. He just became a cute little story that I tell people whenever the subject of ghosts came up. But then, fast forward to last October, when I was at the Witches' Walk with some friends. Dana really wanted to get a reading from a psychic medium, but she didn't want to go alone, so I offered to join her. The medium was packing up for the night, but said she'd do a 2-for-1 reading for us. She started with Dana, telling her some rather specific things about her aunt who'd passed a few years ago. Then she moved on to me. I was really confused when she said there was a spirit coming through for me of a young man who'd taken his own life. I didn't know anyone who fit that description. I told her I had no clue who that could be. "You never actually knew him while he was alive," she told me. "He was lonely in life, but he came across you in his afterlife and liked your energy. So now he just kind of hangs around." Dana cleared her throat next to me, clearly skeptical. And sure, let's be real, it's pretty convenient for a medium to tell you that about someone you apparently never knew. Then they can just make up anything they want, and how are you going to argue? I immediately thought about my Toronto ghost, though. If that was the same guy, I felt kind of bad yelling at him. He certainly couldn't have liked my energy that night. And it's not like he'd done anything wrong, well, other than the cupboards, but we all have our flaws. And mine apparently include being a jerk to lonely ghosts. So now I get to wonder whether that medium was full of it, or whether some dude is following me around, I guess, for my vibes. I can't lie, it's at least slightly flattering to think that someone would spend their afterlife, I don't know, watching me curl my hair or whatever. When I first started to write this story, this was the point where I got stuck. Nothing else had happened. I didn't have an ending. I sent it to a couple friends for their help and then went to bed. Now, I wish I thought to take a picture, because none of you are going to believe me, but that's okay. I have a ton of cards and pictures stuck to my fridge, and when I woke up the next morning, and I swear this is true, some of them were on the floor, and it looked like some of the magnets had been moved ever so slightly. Is it possible that it's a coincidence and my cat got up to something weird in the night? For sure, he's an adorable little weirdo. But isn't it more fun to think that maybe my nameless ghost saw that I was writing about him and wanted to help me out with an ending? If nothing else, at least it wasn't the cupboards or drawers this time. And maybe that's the moral of this story. Even old ghosts can learn new tricks. Thank you.
Now I got a couple poems from my other book called From Darkened Souls. This piece that I'm going to read now is called Hidden Scars. It's basically all the scars that we built up that go hidden. And I was going through a tough time after dealing with shattering my wrist last year. So, the hidden scars of a life lived, paths of darkness that have been trod, still learning to cope with the triggering memories that don't want to be erased, surviving in a way that's been criticized yet never understood, fighting demons that are yet to be named, closing off parts of myself so I won't be hurt again, not wanting to open up due to knowing the damning condemnation that awaits. Bitterness stronger than the darkest night has been brewing longer than has been let on. Letting go a beast that have been created over the years. Pits of torment that no one will ever understand. Hiding behind a metaphorical mask in which the real me has been buried and forgotten. Desperately needing to rid myself of chains that serve no purpose, only to have the hidden scars of a life lived to remain.
What is she saying back there? My name is Brian Gardner, and you'll see me around town doing those Neil Young gigs that I'm hearing so much about tonight. But I live up the road. I live up on Hungerford, literally about 500 meters from here. And when we moved into the neighborhood about 8 years ago, we were told, one of the first things we were told, there's a cat. The cat belongs to the neighborhood. We call him Not My, as in not my cat. And but his real name was Tyson, and Tyson passed away the last summer. But he became a fixture at our house as much as some other houses. And I'll tell you a quick Tyson story. Every morning he'd come to our house and get food, and he'd go across the road. And the house across the road, I'd watch him go across and sit on their windowsill. And he told me one day, we don't feed him, but we have a dog who's scared to death of him. So he comes and stares at the dog. That was our Tyson. And Tyson would come in our house, and he'd go sleep for a couple hours, but he would ignore us. Never, ever, ever socialize with us. And then one day I was sitting in the basement playing this guitar, actually, or one like it, in open G, the Keith Richards tuning. And he came down and sat and was listening, and if you've never played for a cat, they listen, and after a song's over, their head comes up. So they let you know they're listening, and he did that. And so I ran out of songs I know in open G, and so I started noodling on something, and I ended up coming up with this song. It's called Tyson's Blues. Living on the street like an alley cat. Eat what I can. I sleep around. I got no place to call my own. Like old alley cat. Streets of my home. I got no name that nobody knows, but I got style from my tail to my toe. Walk these streets every everybody know the way I strut, I rock and roll. I live my life on life's own terms. Never walk a straight line, my life is twists and turns. I lay my head where I lay my heart, a bed for warmth, a fire that burns. On the street like an alley cat, a bed for warmth, I sleep where I'm at. I live my life on life's own terms. I'm an alley cat, I rock and roll, I'm just an alley cat. Watch me stroll, it's the alley cat, an alley cat.
From a book. We called it a speculative memoir. And this is a trip that me and my 17-year-old buddies made to Orchard Park, New York in 1978 to see the Rolling Stones. Big marching orchestra music blares out of the speakers, surprising everyone. The crowd begins to roar in response, and a big voice with an English accent says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest rock and roll band in the world, the Rolling Stones." The boxes in front of the stage open and 10 million pink balloons rise up before the stage, spiraling into the sky. I look up to watch. As high as I can see, the balloons spiral. The stage is totally obscured, and then it clears, and there he is, in a white t-shirt with a graffiti painting on the front, and red plastic pants that are too short, white socks, and pointed white running shoes. His hands are touching and his fingers are beating a rhythm while his hips swing side to side with the slow guitar chords that fill the sky with noise like jets. His body is all angles, all parts that fit together in awkward symmetry. Big hands and a big head, big feet and a small, lean, muscled body. And every move releases the crowd into more excitement. I turn and look around. 90,000 people all on their feet, clapping in sync with Mick Jagger. A massive blur, the multiple a whole, a singular, orgiastic event. This is the Jagger universe. It starts with Honky Tonk Women, then Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and then Some Girls, the song where he sings, "Black girls just want to get effed all night. I just don't have that much jam." Then Beast of Burden, when the whip comes down, shattered, tumbling dice, and F a star from Goat's Head Soup. Mick runs around up and down the walkways that stretch out on each side of the stage, does his maniacal dance steps, throws his hips, struts and jumps, grabs Ronnie Wood by the balls. He stares into the crowd. A few times he stares at us, at me. I stare back at him, like he is a clown, or a god, or both. I am not moving or dancing. You don't do that if you're from Newcastle. Gomes or Mike or Zeitz aren't dancing or clapping either. We just stand. Gome looks at me and laughs, leaning to my ear. He's insane, man. I nod agreement. Richard stands with his guitar and weaves and bobs. Woods runs around with his, smoking cigarettes as he plays. Wyman plays bass with a stone face and Watts drums like a monkey in a trance. But Jagger is sticking his hands down his crotch and flapping the front of his stretch pants. A bra sails into the air, and other articles of clothing. Shoes, shirts, panties fly toward the stage. I am packed in by bodies so tight I can lift my feet off the ground and be supported. Jagger dodges plastic bottles and more shoes. He is fast. He runs to the far side and runs back. He's so fast. A bottle flies and just misses as he ducks. His anger is apparent as he runs to the other side of the stage. He comes back again and stoops to the crowd. A guy has a bottle lifted and I grab it and throw it to the ground. The guy looks at me and shrugs. But Jagger seems to notice and he waves his finger toward me, nodding in the rhythm. Our eyes lock for the briefest moment before he skips away. He looked at you, Gomes yells into my ear, and I nod. Yes, he did. I felt shivers up my back, I yell back into Sam's ear. They stroll through the songs, Happy, Miss You, Brown Sugar. They play some Chuck Berry stuff, Sweet Little 16. The intensity is built, the momentum is in full swing. 90 minutes have passed. Jagger has stripped off his shirt and jumping Jack Flash is running from the back of the stage and leaping through the air, landing and doing it over again, soaked with sweat, and the crowd is in a roar of ecstatic, feverish joy. And it's over. The Stones gather at the front of the stage. Good night, Buffalo, Jagger hollers into the mic with his English accent, and they leave and the stage is empty. The crowd roars in response. The call of the vanquished, I think, as I stand and look around. Our God has left us empty of our offerings. Our fevered emotions have been sacrificed, and he is fed and gone, and he is not coming back. But I feel wonderful. Without my angst and fears and failures, I stand in an eternal moment. It is the first time I will feel this way. It will be my secret place for the rest of my life. It will enable me to do anything. For in this place, nothing matters. Nothing you do or ever will do exists here. This is freedom. This is where the gods dwell eternally, bobbing in and out of reality at will. And Jagger brought me here.
Now, I recently did a podcast for some guys I met in the States, and I read this poem for that podcast, and they said I had to read this tonight, but it was imperative that I read this tonight. So I'm going to include it tonight. And it is May 9th, 2021, 6:31 a.m. after the dawn. I cut a cake, sliced the layers, stacked like years in the event that resembled the moments past. As I dreamed of rivers lining up to my waist in her cold embrace, I attempted to maintain the dry covering of my soles, but the water moistened my undies and left a coldness that was unwelcome in the early dawn of shrinkage. My boots now wet, remaining so for the days to follow when I climbed back aboard, slicing the paddle to the wake created by my own presence. The still river, a pond in the early moments after the birth of a star, stopping time to witness the awakening before the mist departs towards heaven. Moments rising above the flattened fissures and wavering in the afterbirth of a day. I dream, the paddle, the river, and time flows on towards tomorrow. And my last one this evening is in the same book, Pandemic Moments, and it's April 12, 2021, 8:44 a.m. after the dawn. Attempted to clean the house with little success. Too many distractions that bend my thoughts. hidden behind the veil of curtain, hidden behind the veil, our curtain of veil, you guys are gonna have to forgive me, I'm incredibly nervous, you can see me shaking here. Attempted to clean the house with little success or too many distractions that bend my thoughts. Hidden behind the veil of curtain of falling dreams in the morning rain. There is a name which is to be assigned the thought of absentee activity in slack moments that tremble in the early moments that trigger a delivery into the unknown ether. I think I need a drink so as to form a new habit of distinction and hope that someone else completes the task at hand. Liquid courage after the dawn. Thank you.
Become a parent because, you know, there's a lot of things that I may know about trending in the tech industry because I happen to work in that sector. But I imagine there's a few people here who haven't quite seen what exactly is happening. And that's what this song is about. Here it's a, what do you call it? A public service announcement. And a warning, maybe? The robots are coming. No, they're already here. You didn't see them coming. For your eyeballs and ears. Placate your taste for struggle when no one's wrestling with the truth. You didn't hear it when truth got rewritten. Couldn't hear it for your Bluetooth. Little tiny robots, little tiny robots. You think they're coming, but they're already here. Little tiny robots, little tiny robots. Where did they come from? We invited them sight unseen. Flying into our neglected idle minds. Can't see they didn't advertise. Little tiny robots, little tiny robots. You think they're coming, but they're already here. Little tiny robots.
it's a slow burn romance. So it's not like rip your clothes off, you know, do whatever. The romance builds until the end of the novel. Essentially, it's a family who have owned a lighthouse in a fictional town in Canada, a coastal fictional town in Canada called Lantern Point. And I'm trying to encapsulate it without giving too much away. But a girl whose family was part of the lighthouse, her parents died, and after all that happened, she left. And now she has to come back to Lantern Point because her grandmother has died. And she has always been the keeper. And she suddenly and of course, her lost love. So now she suddenly just finds out that she has inherited this now debilitated lighthouse. And the whole story goes about how she meets her long lost love, how they build it together with the town. And that's essentially it. So this is just the part of the first chapter. I don't think, I think it'll go past 5 minutes if I keep going, but bear with me. So first chapter, it's called The Light Between Us. And first chapter is called Homeward Bound. Coming back to Lantern Point had never been part of Sheena Harper's plan. Not after she left. Not after she built a life around never turning back. Yet here she was, following the slow curves of the coastal highway as December stitched frost along the edges of the world. The ocean revealed itself in flashes beside her, gray and heavy under a winter sky, appearing and vanishing between stands of wind-scorned pines. It felt like driving along the edge of a memory. Snow drifted across the windshield in soft, wandering spirals, caught in the rhythm of the wipers before being swept aside. For hours, Sheena had watched the same pattern: sea, trees, sky, snow. The repetition had become a kind of suspended quiet, the kind that made it impossible to outrun her thoughts. Lantern Point was still 20 miles ahead, but already her pulse had slipped into that old, uneasy stutter, an erratic beat formed of dread and longing braided too tightly to separate. 10 years had gone, and the road home still knew every hesitation she tried to hide. Her aging hatchback dipped into a familiar valley where the signs, weathered now, edges whitened with frost, rose out of the snow. Harper's Cove Road, Wharf Lane, Town Square, next right. They looked smaller than she remembered, as if the years had pressed in around them, or maybe it was she who had grown beyond their borders. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. The heater hummed steadily, but her fingers trembled anyway, not from cold, but something more fragile. A decade of silence weighed differently when the landmarks started calling your name again. She would never have made this drive, except Evelyn was gone, and that truth changed everything. She's gone, Sheena. I'm sorry. Maggie's voice on the phone had cracked like thin ice. Sheena had felt something inside her shift, quietly, devastatingly, as if someone had extinguished a lantern she hadn't realized she'd been keeping lit. She blinked the memory away and turned into the outskirts of town. Lantern Point rose through the haze like a memory returning without permission. Clapboard houses nestled along the water, chimneys exhaling thin strokes of smoke. Christmas lights trembling in the wind as though uncertain whether they still belonged. Winter always held Lantern Point in a hush. Even as a girl, Sheena had felt it. That shared breath the town seemed to take when December came. She slowed at the corner of Main Street. Snow clung to the bakery awning, softening their age. In the window, sugar cookies shaped like tiny lighthouses sat on trays, their iced windows glowing beneath warm lights. They looked exactly as they had the last winter she'd spent here, a detail unchanged while everything else had shifted. Next door, the bookstore was dark, its closed sign hanging tiredly in the window. Across the square stood the cafe where she and Maggie once spent whole Saturdays whispering over cocoa and borrowed dreams. Seeing it made her swallow as if something old and half-healed had resurfaced too fast. Memory was an uninvited tide, one that never asked whether you were ready. She parked beside the post office. When she stepped out, the cold moved through her coat in a clean, merciless sweep. Her boots pressed into powder that squeaked beneath her weight. Pine and sea salt air mingled around her. The scent was too familiar, too nostalgic, too immediate. She stood still for a long moment, suitcase resting beside her, letting the town breathe past her like a living thing. Lantern Point did not react to her return. Nothing shifted, no one glanced her way. Just the slow, steady choreography of winter, blowing snow, quiet streets, a handful of volunteers stringing lanterns along the railings. Lanterns, of course. Her throat tightened. Evelyn had loved lanterns, believed in them with unshakable devotion. Light is a promise, she used to say. When darkness presses close, someone will come looking for it.
Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music and all the places where you get music. Maybe on some of the places where you steal music, I don't actually know. But if you can get it by all means. And last summer I released this song. It's I wrote it for my wife really, and she likes to every once in a while dance, like on the porch or something, and she'll always say, "You think people are watching?" And so that was kind of my jumping off point for this song. And it's really about, finding those couple of really private moments in a not so private world. Anyway, it's a piano ballad. I wrote a 70s piano ballad. When I do my gigs, I kind of play it in standard tuning. So tonight you're getting a third version of it, which is in open tuning here. Lavender fields of purple, set off your summer dress. Wind softly lifted that sweet flowery scent, swaying of the leaves, hair blowing in the breeze. Standing in the flowers, wanna take your hand and say, let's dance like no one's watching. Let's dance like no one's there. You can dance like Judy Garland, I'll dance like Fred Astaire, and we'll dance in the flowers, let everybody stare. 'Cause after all these years together, wanna dance for the love we share. Lake Champlain in the moonlight really does surprise. Shimmer in the darkness, it glows in your eyes. Your silhouette is lovely, it takes my brother away. Out here in the grass, kick off your shoes and say, we'll dance like no one's watching. Gonna dance like no one's there. I'll dance like Ginger Rogers, you can dance like Fred Astaire, and we'll dance in the moonlight, let the neighbors stare. 'Cause after all these years together, wanna dance for the love we share. Dance like no one's watching, we'll dance like no one's there. You look like Audrey Hepburn. I'm no Fred Astaire. And we'll dance here in that kitchen. Let the children stare. 'Cause after all these years together, wanna dance for the life we've shared. Thank you. That's good. Want me to do one more?